Hey, Emily,
Hey, Stephanie.
you want to do a podcast?
Absolutely. Welcome to Cycle Chats, a podcast to destigmatize what it means to be a woman. This is episode 15, Good Mood Nutrition, where we talk to a wonderful and wise lady who helps driven women achieve hormonal, adrenal, and digestive balance. Chelsea. Welcome to the podcast, Chelsea.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, what made you get into this field?
So I'm a registered dietitian. So I started in a lot of clinical settings, and I was just trying to figure out where kind of my niche was, where I wanted to feel like I truly was helping people, because that's why I wanted to become a dietitian in the first place, because I wanted to help people. And I feel like nutrition is such a powerful way to help people. So I kind of over time figured out who that target population is. And it's empowering women, specifically driven women who have physical symptoms or dis-ease that are maybe holding them back from their highest potential. Like women that are like, I don't have time for this IBS nonsense. Like I am going to do great things in the world and I'm not going to let this hold me back. So that's kind of like why I got into this field, because women inspire me and I want them to be able to put their best face forward every day, and I think that nutrition can be a really powerful way to accomplish that.
I know when quarantine started, I realized you can't just be, drinking martinis by the pool every single day. It was like totally undoable. I was like, oh my God, as wonderful as this is, maybe once all the time, no good. So it kind of led me on this journey of like, you know what, I'm going to start like really trying to eat better, right? And as all of this unfolds, you want to make sure you're taking care of yourself, you don't get sick. What a difference. I am like a notorious caffeine addict. It's not a secret. I'm sucking down like 10 cups of coffee a day. It's not good. And I found that the only time that I didn't need that was when I was actually balancing out what I was eating. I was like, oh, wow, it's amazing. Like I really only need half a cup. And I found that I wasn't even finishing a full cup of coffee because I had so much energy from the greens I was eating, from all of the nutritions I was putting into my body. As time went on, you get a job because I was like, well, I got to get something else. And then I noticed that shift again where I wasn't eating very well. And I was like, wow. I mean, the connection point of like, it's true, really what you put in your body. It changes, and it's a lifestyle change. What do you find is the hardest habit for someone to break when they first come to you?
I'm going to say being too hard on yourself. I think that when you hire a dietitian, you think like, okay, this is a person that's going to whip me into shape, right? But really, like, I find myself pausing with people and being like, yo, this perfectionism that you're expecting of yourself is actually really holding you back from progress, and kind of helping people shift that mindset of progress over perfection is really how we move forward. And I think that that's what I go through probably with 99% of my people that come to me.
We have this ongoing thing on this podcast where we're like, put it on a shirt. And that's,
progress over. I want that also tattooed on my forehead, but reversed so that when I look in the mirror, it says it. That's what I need.
So like, what language is that in?
Yeah. Don't worry about it. You don't need to know. I need to know. And I love that. And I did a bunch of nutrition stuff this year. I was diagnosed with something called ulcerative proctitis. I was like, okay, we can't have red meat anymore. It's really bad for my colon. I'm cutting it out. Bye-bye. So we haven't had red meat in our household for a year. We're basically just straight vegetarians who eat chicken every once in a while. I haven't had an issue, no tummy aches, no problems. I mean, I still do my suppository that my doctor told me to do, but other than that, I've had no issues. So I feel really lucky because it's the food that I put in my body that's therefore affecting my health so that it doesn't progress to be maybe eventually colon cancer.
And there's such a personalization piece there, right? Like you're finding exactly what works best for you and your body. And I think that that's the key, right? Like some of us thrive on vegetarian diets and some of us don't. It's okay to really like tune into what your body's needs are instead of like just trying to go with what worked for your cousin Susie or whatever, you know what I mean? Or your friend at the gym, like whatever that might be. Like I really try to encourage people, and that's a lot of the work that I do with people is that personalization, but like really tuning in with what works best for you.
Do you think that people have a hard time? Because I know there are picky people out there like who don't want to try certain foods, which is absolutely absurd to me. I want to try everything. Give it to me. I don't care what it is. I will eat it because I love food. How do you deal with very picky clients that maybe need to make those certain changes, but they're just like unwilling to try that new thing?
So a lot of the people that come to me are just like at the point they will try anything to feel better. But I have worked with a lot of clients that have a lot of resistance. And I think that coming back to that progress over perfection, like start small. We live in such a like instant gratification society where we're just like 0 to 100, and it just doesn't work. So baby steps towards liberalizing your diet and your tastes and being open to consuming something. Like say, for example, like, I had broccoli one time or I had Brussels sprouts one time and they were boiled and I hate Brussels sprouts. It's like, no, you got to roast those things. It's like, think of all the things we like are afraid of and that fear like holds us back. And this is a really like seemingly silly example of like being afraid to try new veggies or something, but you could be missing out on the best appetizer ever.
We're always taught this forbidden fruit stigma on like good and bad foods, and we label food like we do with everything. And sometimes when you strip the label away, you allow yourself to just be free to enjoy. And that's, I think, a lot of times what drives people into this mindset of like blacking out and eating an entire loaf of bread. You're like, oh my God. And then you're sick. And then you're like, I can't eat bread ever again. And now you're completely ripping bread out of your diet. And then you end up kind of putting yourself into this pattern of behavior that's really damaging, not even to you physically, but mentally. The game that you play. You shouldn't have to like struggle at a party because you see a piece of bread sitting there.
Right. And I think that we also have the all or nothing mindset with diet too. Like this chocolate is going to derail me. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not going to derail you. And food is more than nourishment. Food is connection. Food is memories, enjoyment, pleasure. Like all of these things encompass the experience of eating and all of them have value. We just devalue a lot of the other meanings that food can have in our lives. And if we ignore those, they kind of like come out, like in a binge of the chocolate or whatever. But like if we have that like ebb and flow and balance and we're able to just enjoy our food, most of the time, if you're aware in your body, you're going to want healthy foods if you give yourself that permission.
I know that you talk a lot about adrenals on your Instagram. So I don't know a lot about that. Can you educate us on what that is, what they do for us, why they're important?
Totally. So this is another giant topic and I could go on forever and I tend to do that. So stop me.
Never. We're all ears.
So first of all, what are the adrenal glands? They're just these little glands that sit on top of your kidneys. And basically it's what governs your stress response. So a lot of us have heard the term cortisol, right? Like your main stress hormone. And basically your adrenal glands are responsible for pumping out cortisol. And when we hear the word cortisol, I don't know about you guys, but like it just has this negative connotation, right? Like cortisol, stress, bad, right? I like to let people know that cortisol is not good or bad. It's bad when it's out of balance. And when it's in balance, it's really, really beneficial for giving you optimal energy, optimal mood, and, just making you feel less brain fog, all the ways that we want to feel, right? When your adrenals are in balance, pretty much everything else falls back into place. I'm really generalizing here, but really adrenal health is kind of like the Achilles heel of the body. So basically, we're trying to find that balance between high cortisol, where we're super stressed out, anxiety ridden, panic attacks, weight gain around the belly, PMS, regular periods, stomach issues. These are some characteristics of high cortisol. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, right? Stress switch jammed in the on position.
You're saying that the 10 cups of coffee I have a day aren't actually benefiting my cortisol levels? Who would have thought?
Or your Monster energy drinks that I don't know how you do.
Which I have not touched. I stopped, which I have a history of anxiety. I also suffer. I use that term, quote unquote, because I feel that it's benefited me in my life, OCD. And I noticed that sometimes that gets out of whack when I've overdone it on the caffeine. And so I had a tendency to always chase the high of kind of what you said. Why are you eating what you're eating? Why are you consuming what you're consuming? For me, it was always that, that feeling of like productivity and like I was really going to get things done. And I really only felt that when I had super high amounts of caffeine, but then other things were suffering because of it. And like then I was overthinking and I was like kicking all of these things with my OCD into like complete high gear, anxiety, then the crash, depression. And I'm like, oh my God. So I did cut the energy drinks out. So everybody knows, but instead I've substituted it with another, 6.5 cups coffee. So I don't know that has been any better for me. I'm like, it's coffee. It's natural.
You've stumped her. She's like, guys, I gotta go. Sorry, I can't help you.
First of all, no shame. All right. We've all been there. Like, it is what it is. And I want to applaud you for going in the right direction, having that body awareness, right? Like a lot of people don't. But what caffeine does is it increases your cortisol. That pumping out of cortisol increases your anxiety, but it also comes with that increased like burst of energy and temporary focus, not long term. So yeah, and what comes first is the adrenal overdrive. Like I said, the stress switch is basically pressed in the on position. And I think we all can relate to that. But another thing that we can relate to, and you touched on this, was like the overdrive comes first and the burnout comes second. And I think a lot of people after this last crazy year are in this burnout stage now because they maybe led stressful lives before COVID. And then after all this crazy stressful stuff happened, like we're in burnout now. A lot of us are. And I always say like, I stole this from another dietitian. And I really feel like I wish I could give her credit, but I can't remember who it was. Drinking a lot of caffeine when you're in the burnout stage is like overdrafting on your account. You don't have anything left, but you're trying to like push your adrenals to create more and more cortisol when it's just your brain is basically trying to protect you by calming that response down, but there's that overcorrection, right? So it's a balance for sure. And like I said, we've all been there, but excessive caffeine intake is one of those stressors that's going to like push you into burnout eventually. So it's one of those things that's really important to find balance for you.
Listen to that, Stephanie. Listen to it. It's like another Sex and the City thing.
She's like, this really isn't a podcast. This is an intervention.
Could you imagine if I did that? Oh my God. That would be so funny.
But we always say with every one of these podcasts, when we get off and we're done speaking, we talk to each other and we're always taking something away from every conversation that we have. So it's food, good food for thought. And it's something that I'm very self-aware of certain things, so I can poke fun at it. But I also know that it's very true. Like excessive of anything is not great. So with that, what are some foods that specifically women can eat to help with our adrenal health?
So that's a great question. And I just want to, before I go into specific foods, just say that like overall lifestyle is key for adrenal stuff. Even if you're in the overdrive stage where you're high anxiety or the burnout phase, either one, really a whole lifestyle is key. You could eat a perfect diet and not be sleeping at night and you're not going to heal. You know what I mean? Like, so just pointing that out before we get into foods. So basically it comes down to this, like, what are your emotional stressors and what are your physical stressors? And that's individual for everybody. But it's a really important distinction here that your body reacts to stress the same way. Emotional stress, like deadlines and traffic or whatever, just living our lives. And then the physical stress of inflammation, blood sugar dysregulation, nutrient deficiencies, sleep issues. Like I said, all of that increases cortisol too and can cause that dysregulation the same way as like sitting in traffic and getting frustrated would. It's the same response in your body. That being said, if one of your biggest physical stressors is blood sugar dysregulation, foods that I would recommend are high quality protein with every meal and snack for blood sugar control, and balanced complex carbs. This is a big mistake, ladies, that a lot of us are making because most of us are in one of these buckets, right? We're either burned out or we're like really stressed. And we go on these really low carb diets. Your body needs carbohydrate, a certain amount, to feel safe. A lot of us have different thresholds and it's based on our genetics. That's a whole nother podcast to go into carbs. But I'm just saying, if you are in one of those buckets, a very low carb diet is probably not for you. I say probably because everybody's different, but those are like two main places I start. And then high quality fats too, like that, not inflammatory fats, but healthy fats. And we can go into more like detail with these three things, but those are really important for blood sugar control, for example. So that's a really like fundamental place that I start with all of my clients.
It's interesting you say that too, because when I was really I've always kind of had this pull towards nutrition. And I think that's because I grew up in an Italian family. So a lot like Emily, just food was like at the forefront of everything. And so my relationship with food has been very hit or miss, right? It's either excessive or like starve myself, none at all, binge eat at night. And as I, started to recognize these things and I'm like, I want to take care of myself, I started kind of dipping into, I guess you would call them the fad diets. But then you start to see through that there are actual substantial things from each you can take. So something I had gone on YouTube, I had found a fitness influencer. She's not really, she really talks about her own struggles with weight. She said that keto was very beneficial for her. So I tried it and I just found myself missing something. And I'm very happy that you said, as women, some women, like a low carb is not great. They do need some more carb. The minute I added that extra kick of carbs to what I was doing, I immediately saw the results that I wanted. I felt not even that I wanted, but it was a feeling. It wasn't even a physical thing. It was a feeling. I was like, I don't feel so like dragged down to the ground and heavy. It added whatever I was missing out of that. So I'm like, full keto was not my thing. I realized that I needed more carbohydrate in order to balance out whatever was going on inside me. So it's important to keep bringing that up because I think women are inherently taught that carbs are bad, don't touch them, don't even look at them or you're going to get huge. And it's like, no, okay, yeah, an entire family-sized bag of Doritos is not excellent for you, but like there are good carbs that are there to help you and be your friend.
Yes. And like that's a really good example of really tuning into your body and knowing what's right for you. We just hear so much on the internet and social media and from our friends and families, you should eat this, you should eat this way. Like everybody has an opinion and it's overwhelming, but really we need to shut out all of that noise and just listen to how we're feeling. And diets that have a name, let's just say that, like something that has a name is trying to sell you something. That is a fundamental fact that people are making a lot of money off of women feeling like they need to eat a certain way or restrict. And, people are making a lot of money off of people's insecurities and it's kind of messed up. And I'm painting with a very broad brush here, but it's something to just be mindful about when you're out there, like consuming this information. And another thing, women they never feel like they're under eating either. We have it ingrained in us, like that we just need to restrict more. We don't need to add more. And that's a big mental shift that I work on with my clients too, because if you're under eating, your adrenals are going to be like danger, danger, danger. It's stressful on your body. And women go through these cycles at least of like under eating and binging. And if you're thinking of your body trying to keep you safe, your body's going to drive you to that binge. Physiologically, you have a big drive for that binge because you're under eating and your body doesn't feel safe. And you're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel panicky. You're not going to feel the way you want to feel when you're under eating. And we never think about that we might be actually under eating or under eating specific like macronutrients like carbs. It just doesn't even occur to us because we're always in this restriction mindset.
When I was younger and we would go to restaurants with my family, I was the 7-year-old that would be like, I'll have an appetizer, I'll have an entree, I'll have the dessert. And then I'd take like a bite of each and I'd be like, I'm full. Okay, I'm done. I was always told my eyes were bigger than my stomach, but I just wanted to taste everything in truth. So I thought a little bit of everything would go a long way. And no, I did not share. They were for me. My 3-course meal was for me.
My grandmother, we always used to say just a taste. She just wanted a taste. Grandma, you have diabetes. You cannot have that like triple fudge cake. And she's like, got me. And she would still take a bite of it. And we're like, okay, well, you are obviously going to do whatever it is that you would like.
All right, Grandma, that's a sometimes food, not an always food.
Oh no, it was that and pasta was always food. She's just like, pop me full of insulin. I don't care. I'm going to eat what I want to the day I die. And she did. And she was very happy. She was like, I'm just going to eat whatever I want. You're not going to tell me no. And that's it.
And that's okay. Like, when do we ever just say like, that is okay? Like, that is people's right to be like, I want to eat whatever I want while I'm on this earth. Like, that's totally your right. And that's cool. And no one should ever shame you for that. That's your choice.
I mean, Jesus, she was like 83 at that point when we'd be like, Grandma, you're not allowed to touch that, you know? But on the other hand, my grandfather, he comes from Sicily, and he is a big school of thought, like fresh. We're pretty sure he knows how to speak vegetable, and he grabs them in the store, and it's like he's having a conversation. My brother would say when he'd go shopping with him, he'd be like, I don't know, he picked up the eggplant. It's like looking at it, and he's like, this one's not ready yet. My brother's like, well, how do you know that? The one you just picked up looks the exact same, the one that's ready and the one that's not. He's like, no, I just know. They tell me. I'm like, okay. So to the piece of under eating, I do find that is something, right? You either undereat and then you're so hungry you overeat. But specifically with under eating, is that something that most of your clients come to you with? And then how would you fix that?
I think that a lot of women are under eating, at least in a cyclical pattern, like to punish themselves or, even unconsciously, or if you're just say you're really stressed out and you're taking care of kids and you're going back and forth to your job, like you prioritize everybody else's nourishment and you don't prioritize yourself. There's just a lot of reasons why this could happen, which makes it very common. And I think that how to approach it depends, like the famous dietitian answer, I'm realizing. It depends. Some of my clients, what I'll do is we'll calculate their needs together and we'll try to get them to go through a day of what that would look like to eat that much food and compare it to what they're actually eating and really just see with the numbers what that would look like. And that can be really powerful. I never recommend food tracking and meticulously counting your calories long term. I don't think that that's helpful and sometimes detrimental for some women, a lot of women. So I pick and choose that exercise for certain women. But there's that. And then there's the intuitive eating piece, right? We're coming back to this intuition, this body intuition. It's trying to tell you something all the time throughout the day and really nailing in what hungry feels like. When we're not prioritizing ourselves, for example, and we're running errands, doing everything for everybody else, your anxiousness could start to increase. And that is the sign that you're under eating and you should have eaten a snack. Or there are other signs other than that classic hunger that we're used to feeling, in our stomach or our throat or wherever, that we need to eat. Does your energy tank? Like I said, are you getting more anxious? Because that is one of the main jobs of our adrenal glands is to, when we get low blood sugar, when we get a dip, our adrenals pump out cortisol to release stored sugar in our liver so we don't die. The cortisol is going to make you feel amped up and anxious. So if you're having a low blood sugar response, you're going to feel more anxious and you should be eating. So I think that I go through a lot of tuning into your own hunger and fullness cues for people because we're really disconnected from that as a whole. So that's definitely something that so a couple of things that I do to approach that with people.
I think that's what you said is so true. It's following impulses. Both Stephanie and I were acting teachers, and I'm currently teaching college level, and it's always something that I say to my kids, we don't follow our impulses. We usually stifle them because of all of these things that society has therefore put on us. So it gets in the way of just us. I always say when they're doing a monologue, if their body tries to take a step forward and they kind of stop in the middle of that step, so they're just kind of harboring between this unnatural position, I'm like, listen to your body, fulfill the step, because it's literally telling you, hey, I would like to take a step forward, please. Can you complete that action? But then that something in your body also goes, hey, no, we're going to stop in the middle and we're not really sure. We're going to stifle that impulse. So I think the idea of really being connected and listening to your body when you're hungry is huge, because unfortunately we were watching TV, we have, Instagram, Facebook, all of these things that are influencing us and telling us, okay, well, do this or do this. So instead of actually listening to what this is, which is a temple and it's beautiful, I'm pointing to my body for those of you who can't see me, we're listening to outside sources. And I think that's huge. And it's really difficult to get back to what it was when you were first born. Because, right, there's this whole idea of, sorry, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, acting tangent. But when you're a child, when you're first born, right, you have all the impulses. You need to do something, you're going to do it. You know exactly what posture is correct as a baby. So there's something called Alexander technique, which is basically telling you to get back to that baby status, right? That status of just being totally a blank slate. You know exactly that your body is in line. You don't, but you're therefore in your household, you're watching your parents, they're slumping like this. Then you say, okay, human being, hey, you're going to slump like that too. So it's all about outside forces just feeding into your brain, to your body. And it's just stifling what we know naturally as humans, which is huge.
Can I ask you, Chelsea, because I think this is the perfect time to ask this question. How do you feel social media has influenced nutrition, specifically with women?
I don't think it's a positive thing. Most of the people who are qualified to give advice, I don't say this like I'm on my high horse because I'm a registered dietitian. I say this because I spent 7 years to get my degree. And you have to have your master's degree now to be able to give nutrition advice as a registered dietitian. And people read one book or get involved in a pyramid scheme and they're giving blanket advice to people, and it can be they're not aware of how it's hurting people, and maybe they are and they're just not very ethical about it. I think that there are a lot of well-meaning people out there that are causing more harm than good. And I think that you got to really do a sweep of your social media. Like, who are you following on Instagram, and how does that like make you feel when you scroll through your home screen? Like, are you feeling like sick to your stomach? Are you saying negative things to yourself about your body, about who you are, about what you've accomplished? Like, obviously we all know that those are the highlight reels, but no matter what, we're going to compare ourselves to people. And I think that it's really important to curate that message that you're getting every day, because apparently the average screen time we have is about 5 hours a day, which is like mind-boggling on our phone, just our phone. That's a really big percentage of our life. It is really affecting you. So it's hard to get good advice out there because there's just so much out there. And a lot of the registered dietitians are working in hospitals and clinics, and they're not on social media, but they're starting to be more on there. And you got to really research, like, you got to really critically look at like where you're getting this advice from. It's really important.
Especially when someone says, lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks. Well, whatever this crash diet somebody's about to put you on, you are going to bounce back 10 times harder from. This quick fix thing that you said, Chelsea, is so poignant because everybody is looking for right here, right now. I don't have time. I'm very busy. I need to look this good in 3 days. And people don't realize how negatively that affects your body. First of all, think about it. It takes 9 months for you to develop to like become a fully formed human being, to like come into this earth, right? What makes you think in 2 weeks, all of a sudden now you're just going to tell your body, hey, guess what? I mean, that puts stress on your heart. It puts stress on your liver, your kidneys, everything. I mean, you're meant, and that's a really big piece that we're seeing now. We're talking about it more. And Emily and I, as teachers, we often see our students as they start to get older post these photos. More recently, I would say a young lady that I personally have a ton of admiration for. She worked under me. And she was really like, I was like training her to be like backstage help and like run the whole thing and learn how to bring the props out. And she was awesome. And she was so good at it. But she also suffered with a lot of insecurity. And these are things that we would talk about. And like, I noticed recently she had posted a picture of herself. She looked very cute in it. She's also very young, and it was very like, look at my body. And I noticed the amount of likes and comments and reaching out. And I kind of tossed up the idea to reach out to her to say, hey, listen, we've had conversations. You've shared with me, the certain things that you feel insecure about. Don't feel like this is going to fill that void in you, because I know that a lot of times social media can lead young girls into eating disorders based on what they see, their friend who genetically is just thinner than them. They think, oh, if I eat that kind of a diet, if I ate like Emily did, I still wouldn't look like Emily. She's a little bit tinier than I am. Fine. Okay. But we have different metabolisms, how we are shaped, formed, our bone structure, all of that good stuff, genetic. People don't realize play a humongous part. I'd love to welcome you back to have that full 3.5 hour conversation, because I could dip all the way into it and it would solve so many issues for people who are like, why don't I look like this? So I think it's really important that we seek out proper guidance, and it kind of, to tie into what you said, be very careful about whose advice you're taking. Look at the source. Where are they getting their information from? You studied 7 years in this field. I would trust you. You obviously do this because you have a passion for it, but you also have the knowledge behind it. You're not just saying like, oh, eat this because it's what I do. You're like, no, everybody's different. And let's get to the root of why you are doing the things you're doing. Now let's connect you with the what.
And let's celebrate why you're different. Let's not try to make you like everybody else, right? Like you can be healthy or unhealthy at any size. And it doesn't really help that every time you go to the doctor's office, they're like, you could lose a couple pounds. It's like, you didn't even ask me any questions about my lifestyle. My labs are perfect. Like, why do you automatically assume I could lose a couple pounds? That piece is another piece of puzzle that doesn't help. But I think that we just get these messages from all over the place. And then we have maybe this like justification of like, no, skinnier people are healthier. And it's like, nope, that's not the case. Absolutely 100% false.
Oh yeah, I used to get that a lot. But people would be like, oh my God, you're so tiny, you can eat anything. And I'm like, you don't even know how unhealthy I actually am. And that was my own like battles that I had to fight, and the things that I had to like acknowledge about myself is that thin doesn't equal healthy and fat doesn't equal unhealthy. Those are just words that describe something, but it doesn't actually put a merit on whether you are or are not being good to your body. And I really wish more people, specifically women, I know men have their own struggle with it as well, but I wish they would tune into that and be able to connect the dots that like, it's not a visual thing, it's a feeling. And if you're not feeling good, but you look beautiful, then it's not very beautiful.
You can't look at somebody and know how healthy they are. Most of the time. Sometimes you can. You're like, oh, you don't look like you feel so good. But it's a marker of health, not the marker of health. And we put way too much emphasis on it being even a marker of health sometimes. So that's a whole nother conversation too. For those of you who are interested in this topic, Health at Every Size by Linda Bacon, I believe is what it's called, is a really good read. It just kind of goes into the data of why like maybe we've misinterpreted some of the scientific data about different body sizes. It's really interesting.
What would you say is your most successful story with one of your clients? Like what's one that stands out to you?
So we'll come back to like the energy piece, the adrenal piece. I get these messages from my clients now, and it just empowers the shit out of me. Like when people go from dragging and not being able to like even get through their day and like hardly get through their to-do list, they feel better and they're getting through their to-do list, they're crushing it. They're inspired to move up in their company or start their own business. And this takes time, right? This is a process. I'm not saying 0 to 100 here, but like people have really taken the time to invest in their health. You never regret it. You crush all of the other goals that you didn't think you could accomplish, because when you have more energy, you feel more positive, you feel more like yourself, you feel more authentic, you're able to really like live up to your best version of yourself. And that's what really like, it really puts a fire under my butt to like keep doing this work. The other day I got a text from somebody and she was like, usually I get like one thing done a day, maybe nothing, and I'll just sit on my couch. And she just like told me her whole day of everything she did. And then afterwards I like had fun with my family because I still had like energy to do that. And I was like, yes, nutrition and diet is to make your life better, not to make it worse. We like look at it so wrong, right? Like restriction and it's going to suck and I'm taking something away from myself. It's like, no, you are adding so much, right? Like to your life and your potential. And that is like, I went on forever. I'm rambling, but I love that question.
But no, but it's true though, is that people don't realize that getting kind of to who you are at the core, and especially in regards to nutrition, exercise, all that, if you look at it like you are applauding your body, you are saying thank you to it, and you're not, and again, not to deprive it. People put this negative connotation like you have to have bland chicken and rice. You're not a bodybuilder. You don't, it's like not going to a show. You're a normal human being. Like enjoy what you're doing. Try new foods. Say, I don't really like it prepared that way, but man, roasted, amazing. Who would have thought? With a little bit of lime. I think it should be a fun journey. And I think to switch the mindset, and that was a really big piece for me, was realizing that how I chose to look at feeling better and exercise, because I was always like, oh my God, I'm not going to see abs right away. And I go into this whole spiral, and I was like, yeah, but you're not doing it for that. You're doing that because your mental health is suffering and you need to like have some reprieve and be nice to yourself. Then I started to realize it's not about an end goal. It's actually about how I'm feeling. And even if I have a bad exercise day or a bad eating day, it's not really bad. It just was a day, and tomorrow will be a new one. And I get to start all over again. And how fun is that?
Yeah, how fun is that? Well said.
So when you were talking a little bit before, I heard a lot about empowerment and all of that. So I have to ask what women empowerment means to you.
I love this question. Well, first of all, equal pay. What up, ladies? Come on. And then knowing how your body works and being empowered that you can change how you feel. I think that we're not really taught how our bodies work, how our hormones work, how our cycle works. Like, it's just this mystery thing, you know, for people, because we're just not taught about it. And yeah, I could go on a long time for this, but I think women empowerment means knowing your body and knowing that it's an instrument for your happiness in life. And when you have that perspective, you treat it differently. You don't expect perfection, and you eat the chocolate, and then the next day you eat your broccoli, and it's just this beautiful ebb and flow. And that's where optimal health comes from.
I like that answer. And yes, equal pay. My goodness. We'll get there. So then my last question would be, what advice would you give your 15-year-old self?
That was a time of like peak anxiety for me. I had panic attacks. Just to give you a little background there, I was a very, very anxious 15-year-old, and no external thing that could explain it. And honestly, with what I know now and what I've gone through with my own nutrition and meditation and all of the tools that I have in my toolbox now, just telling my 15-year-old self, like, your anxiety has physical triggers. I wish that I could have met with me now at 15 to like tell her, yo, like, balance your blood sugar. And you're not alone with this anxiety thing. This is something that you can fix. And it won't be perfect, and there will be bumps in the road, and that's okay, but you can do something about this. I didn't even know that other women or other kids had anxiety, but now I know pretty much everybody does. So that would be my big conversation with my 15-year-old self.
It's that age where we play the comparison game. We start to become aware of boys, girls, how we feel, and then our parents play a part in it, and family sometimes, and then school, and then what are you going to do when you get to and if you're going to go to college, all of these external factors. And I think that that's really important, that there will be bumps in the road, but they're not mountains. Sometimes they're molehills. They're tiny little, just boop, and it's okay. This has been lovely. And I always love talking to our nutrition and health women, something I have a very tiny passion for. And I think that kind of plays into what you said, is their anxiety is very common and can be fixed. It's not going to go away forever and ever. It's just part of being human, sometimes being stressed, a little nervous, but to the extent that you have it, it can be helped. So I love talking to our health women, and I want anybody listening to be able to really dive into the world that is you. So where can our listeners find you, and do you have any fun or special projects coming up that they should be on the lookout for?
So I'm really just working on more one-on-one client time right now. That is where I thrive. That's what I love. And I love getting in the nitty-gritty with one person, because that work has such a ripple effect, and it really is amazing to me. So you can find me on good.mood.nutrition on my Instagram. That's where I hang out most of the time for my content. And yeah, I'm hoping to get my newsletter going and more like a blog sort of situation going. That's like been in the back of my mind. And you can subscribe to that newsletter in the links in my Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you. This was informative, really fun. We took the train off the tracks for a little while, but we got her back on. So thank you. We know Steph always says time is precious, and we just appreciate you giving up some of your time to hang out with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This has been really fun.
And with that, we certainly hope that you sync up with us next.